Yo, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to another at-home video, because unfortunately the car is still in the shop. Now I do have some updates on that, but I'm gonna save all that information for another video because it's kind of a lot of things to throw in right now. But I've actually been wanting to make this video for a long time now. Ever since I made the channel and started doing Rx-8 content, one of the most common questions I get is like, do you think I should buy a Rx-8? Do you think a Rx-8 would be a good project car? Do you think a Rx-8 would be a good first car? I've actually gotten comments like, how can I convince my parents to get me a Rx-8 as my first car? And some of you guys actually already went out and bought yourself a Rx-8 because of the videos. It's kind of crazy. I actually do get messages on Instagram of you guys sending me pictures of your Rx-8s. It's crazy to think that I would ever be in a position where I could like influence others to buy a car, and that's just crazy to me. But because of all those comments, I've always wanted to make a video about who should buy a Rx-8, especially in 2023. There's so many cars out there right now. Who should buy a Rx-8 in 2023? And that's gonna be what we're talking about today. And if you guys are tuning into the channel for the first time, my name is Jerry, and I have a 2004 Mazda Rx-8 that I've been daily driving for almost 2 years now in New York City. And in those 2 years, I put about 10,000 miles on the car. Now I get that's not the craziest amount of mileage you could put in a car in 2 years, but you gotta think about it. 10,000 miles in New York City, all that city traffic, all that highway traffic, right? It adds up, and I've driven it every single day in the snow, summer, fall, spring, all the season you could think of. I've driven the car, so that's where I'm coming from when I give you guys my experience on whether or not you should buy a Rx-8 in 2023. Before I sat down to film this video, I kind of just really thought about it, like what kind of people would actually be looking for Rx-8s in 2023, like what group of people would actually be shopping for one of these cars. And I came up with pretty much 3 groups of people in my head that would most likely be shopping for Rx-8s. Now there's definitely more than just 3 groups of people looking at these cars, right? But I think these 3 groups of people is going to be the most predominant people looking for Rx-8. And if you don't fit into any of these 3 groups of people, just let me know in the comment section below and we can have like a little discussion there. But before we even talk about that, the one thing that's going to apply to everyone when they're shopping for Rx-8 is that you got to know that these are not it's not going to be your regular turnkey and go car. Now the Rx-8 has a rotary engine in it. Now if you guys don't know what that is, I would highly recommend staying away already at this point, because rotary engines just require so much extra work to take care of compared to piston engines. If you guys don't know what a rotary is, essentially a spinning Dorito that powers the car instead of traditional pistons. Now because of the design of the engine, there's just so many extra things that you got to do to make sure the engine stays healthy. I actually did like a video that, like, one of my most popular video on the channel is just me talking about all the things that I learned about it, and I'm gonna link it in the description below. But these cars are just so picky with like the way that you maintain it. You gotta make sure you really stay on top of it. So if you're looking for a non-high maintenance car, this is not it. Like, one of the things you gotta do is make sure the car warms up before you drive. Like, let the RPM normalize, stay under 3,000 RPM if you're gonna move it right away, if you're not going to fully let it warm up, right? So that's like time taken off your commute if you just need a turnkey car to get from point A to point B. You also, one of the highly recommended things that you need to do through these cars is pre-mixing. If you don't know what that is, you're essentially adding a little bit of 2-stroke oil into your gas tank whenever you fill up. Just make sure your apex seals are properly lubricated. Now a lot of people debate whether or not you actually need to do this step because of the OMP, but extra lubrication never hurts your engine. And with you wouldn't realistically have no way to tell if your OMP is actually messed up. So you don't want to risk the chance of like your apex seals not being lubricated and you're gonna blow your engine that way, right? That's another thing. And premix adds up in price, right? They're not cheap. Another thing is that one of these cars, they just burn through gas like crazy. So you also gotta take into consideration like the gas mileage. You're probably gonna realistically only get like 13 miles per gallon, and when you're on the highway, if you're driving it real slow, you might get up to like 20 miles per gallon. But like the moment you step on the gas, and you would want to honestly step on the gas a little bit because of the design of the rotary, you need to bring it up to the high RPMs to get rid of the carbon buildup inside the rotors. So everything just combined makes for a unique car that just not really, user friendly. You got to make sure you know what you're doing to properly take care of these cars so you don't mess it up. And that's the most important thing, in my opinion, that most people need to know before even consider buying the Rx-8s. Like, are you gonna be able to stay on top of everything? Are you gonna be able to like do all these maintenance things? And I would really urge you guys to do a little bit more research yourself if you're actually thinking about buying one of these cars. But if you're still thinking about buying one of these cars, we're going to talk about the 3 groups of buyers, in my opinion, that are probably looking for Rx-8 and whether or not you should buy it if you fit into one of these 3 categories. Now, the first category is going to be for new drivers, new car enthusiasts looking for a cheap car to get into like the sports car scene, and they want something that handles really well, and they want something, you know, that's pretty cool, flashy and all that. I think the Rx-8 is in a really good spot right now for those group of buyers because it's so cheap. Now, the entry level for Rx-8 is like you could probably find yourself a running and driving Rx-8 for around 5 to 6 grand. Granted, it's probably not going to be the most beautiful condition. It's not going to be the best condition one out there for 5 to 6 grand, but you could get yourself a running and driving Rx-8 for around 5 to 6 grand, and that's really good. Not only do you have a really good handling car, it handles amazingly. You get this amazing 9,000 RPM, and you also get the same chassis as an NC Miata, and that chassis is just amazing. And there's a lot of people that debate about it, whether or not it's actually, I'm gonna get a lot of hate for this, but the Rx-8 is honestly a superior chassis compared to the Rx-7. Even Rob Dahm agrees, and he's like the Rotary guy, the Rx-7 guy. So the Rx-8 is just a really good handling car. Plus, you get 4 seats if you want to drive your friends around. So for your first car, I could honestly see why a lot of people would consider the Rx-8. If you go on Marketplace right now, you could find so many of them for even under 5 grand. Now, would I recommend buying those? I don't know. You would really have to compression test the car and make sure the engine's healthy. But you know, if you get lucky, you might even find a running good one with a rebuilt engine for less than $5,000. And I honestly can't think of a better car to buy for under 5 grand that gives you everything that the Rx-8 has. So I can see why those group of buyers gonna be looking at the Rx-8, and if you're in this group of buyer, I would still have to recommend against it just because of all the high maintenance, right? If you really think about it, if you're buying this car as your first car, let's say you're like a recent graduate student, or you're a high school student that's been working part-time and you've saved up some cash, you got like 5 grand, 6 grand, or maybe even a little bit more in the bank, and you're like, I'm gonna use this money to buy a car. You pick up an Rx-8, I'm gonna just be real honest here, right? You might think that you could handle all the maintenance, but let's be honest, right? Will you actually be able to do that every single time you start the car? Will you actually be able to get pre-mix in time every single time to make sure you pre-mix your car, right? Now, I honestly thought about getting an Rx-8 for my first car as well, back like 4 years ago when I was shopping for cars. I ended up not doing it because I was just so stressed about like all the maintenance I would have to do. I ended up buying a Miata for my first car, and I have no regret about that. I think the Miata taught me a lot about how to take care of a car, and because I live in New York City, I have to move the car every other day, like just for alternate side parking and random street cleaning reasons, right? So if I had my Rx-8 at that time and I started the car every single morning and I need to move it real quick, and then you know, that's a whole ordeal. Like, I would have to be driving around for quite a bit before I could turn off the car, because you can't turn off our Rx-8 until it's fully warmed up. So there's just a lot of responsibility that go into owning one of these cars, and if you're not like a really big Rotary enthusiast, I would highly recommend just looking at some other cars. You probably find similar cars for for the same value. You could probably find yourself an Acura RXX. I think those are really nice. You could find yourself a Miata. You could find yourself an older Civic. Now, I don't think those cars are as like cool as the Rx-8 in my opinion, but I would highly recommend just going that route because of the difficulties of maintaining a rotary engine. Now, the second group of buyers that I think would be looking at Rx-8s is just non-car guys, or just like, you know, your regular guy looking for a daily driver and they see a Mazda Rx-8 pop up on Marketplace for around, like I said, these cars are really cheap right now. You can find them for like $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 on Marketplace. Even dealerships are selling them for only like around 6 grand. Now, imagine you're just a regular guy and you come across a Mazda, right? You don't even know what an Rx-8 you come across an automatic Rx-8 for like 3 grand on Marketplace, or an automatic Rx-8 for 5 grand on a dealership, used dealer near you, right? You're gonna think in your head, because Mazda is honestly a really popular brand nowadays in 2023. I think the CX-5 is like one of the best selling cars in the United States. So you see a used Mazda pop up for 4 or 5 grand, and it's automatic. You see that it has 4 seats, 4 doors. Like, what's to stop someone who doesn't know much about these engines just buying these cars? Now, unfortunately, I feel like a lot of those buyers are probably not going to be watching videos like this about whether or not they should buy a RX-8. But I think those group of people is highly gonna fall victim into just buying a car that they don't know much about, and at driving it, and then they don't know how to take care of it properly, and then the car blows up on them in like a few months. And that's the unfortunate truth of it. And I feel like that's probably one of the reasons why the RX-8 failed so miserably when it first got launched, because so many people bought it, right? The RX-8 was a really good selling car, and so many people made, like, a lot of car journalists at the time made really good reviews about the car. And that's not to like fault them, like the RX-8 is a really good car, but because of all those good reviews and all those people hyping it up, a lot of people bought RX-8s that don't really know about the rotary engines, and they just drive it like a regular car. They don't warm up the car, they just redline it every other day without letting it warm up. And that I'm like, this is not proven, right? But I'm 100% sure, I'm like, okay, maybe not 100%, I'm like 50% sure that that's one of the reasons, and one of the big contributing reasons to why the RX-8 failed so miserably, because just no one knew how to take care of them, and people bought them up, and they drove it to the ground essentially. And then the third group and final group of people that I think are looking at RX-8 is people who are actually rotary enthusiasts and wants to get into the rotary platform for a cheap price. Now, for those group of people, realistically, you're probably going to be looking at SA RX-7s, FC RX-7s, or RX-8. And I think the RX-8 is a really good candidate for a car if you're just looking for an entry point into the rotary platform. Because let's think about it, right? SA RX-7, you're dealing with a non-fuel injected rotary engine. It's going to be the 12B, or is it 12A engine, right? It's going to be carbureted, not fuel injected. That's going to be really hard for like kids nowadays to really think about and maintain. And then if you look at the FC RX-7s, a lot of the really nice FCs are going to be higher in the price point, like more expensive than RX-8s. But if you're only looking at the ones that for around the same price, 5-6 grand, you could get yourself a nice convertible RX-7. The hardtop ones are a little bit more expensive, but at that price point, you're dealing with a car from the 80s, right? Not only do you have to worry about rotary engine issues, you're gonna have to worry about 80s car issues. So like any electronics that might break, any lights, ECU wiring stuff, that's gonna be really tough to deal with. And you're gonna be dealing with like pre-OBD2, so you're gonna be dealing with like OBD1 codes, and that's hard to read, right? So I think the RX-8 is in a really good spot, being a 2000s car. So you have pretty modern tech in there. You still got cruise control, I mean, I think some FCs does have cruise control, but you're just dealing with a much nicer car and much better living car overall. And for the price of RX-8s right now, even if you don't have to drive the car every day and it's just your project, I think the RX-8 is a really good platform, because there's so many parts for it that's still being produced today. And how do I know? Because I recently got in an accident with my RX-8, and when I'm looking for parts, there's so many parts still available brand new from Mazda if you actually need it. So I think the RX-8 is just in a really good spot for the third group of buyers. And if you are in the third group of buyer, I would highly recommend, and honestly, this is probably the only group of buyers that I would actually recommend to buy the RX-8. Because if you're in the first two group of buyers, I just can't recommend it, right? This is the only time I would ever recommend anyone to get an RX-8 is if you're actually into rotary cars, or if you're interested in getting into the rotary platform. I think the RX-8 is probably the best entry point into it for the money. Now, I'm sure that there's more than just these two groups of buyers that's potentially looking at RX-8s. And if that happens to be one of you guys, let me know in the comment section below. I'm genuinely interested at who else would actually be looking at RX-8s outside these two groups of buyers. So let me know in the comment section below, and we can have a little discussion there. Now, I want to point out that this video is not scripted, so I'm not reading from a script or anything. I did sit down and think about like some of the topics I want to talk about, but it's not scripted, so I'm sure there's a lot of things that I wanted to say or wanted to answer that I just completely forgot about. So I really urge you guys to let me know in the comment section below if you do have any questions, comments, or anything like that. And I can't wait to talk to you guys about it in the comment section, because I know so many of you guys have been asking about should you get an RX-8 and if you think you should get an RX-8 and etc. So hopefully this does answer a lot of your questions. And it's honestly really easy to see how people would be interested in the RX-8, because like you literally watch any reviews of the car, right, on YouTube, anywhere else, like all there is good things to say about the way it handles. Even like Rob Dahm, who's like the god of rotary engine cars, right? He's known for the RX-7 and stuff like that. He's driven RX-8s before as well, and he even says the RX-8 is the superior chassis to the RX-7. Before mods, obviously. Once you start adding mods to it, it's really just about who did a better job modding the car. But chassis by chassis, like the RX-8 shares the same chassis as the NC Miata, so it's pretty much a given that it's going to handle amazingly. But that's pretty much all I wanted to say for the video, I think. But like I said, it's not scripted, so I'm pretty sure there's a lot of things I wanted to say that just completely slipped my mind. So I urge you guys to ask any question in the comment section below. But aside from that, I think I'm gonna wrap up the video here. You know, I really wanted to make this video for a long time now. I just never thought I'd actually make the video when I don't have my car. So, but more updates to that to come, right? I know a lot of you guys have been curious about what's going on with the Rx-8. I get a lot of DMs on Instagram saying, hey, what front bumper did you end up getting and stuff like that? What you end up doing? Are you gonna repaint the whole car? You know, all those questions, you know, it will be answered soon. All I have to say right now is, at the time of recording this video, should be about 4 weeks until I get the car back. So that's all I'm gonna say for now. But I'm gonna wrap up the video here. Hopefully you guys are having a good day, good night, wherever you are around the world. Don't forget to comment in the comment section below, because I want to have this discussion with you guys. And until the next one, guys, peace. Stay safe out there, all right?